Hi, this is Bob from Hobby Concepts, and today I've got something totally different for me. And this is this 3D printed Battlestar Galactica Viper MKII in 1/10 scale. This thing is huge. I did all the printing from Gambody files. I'll put some links in the description. Did some cool lighting effects. You can see the engines. It has a working Dratus in the cockpit, illuminated instruments. Super fun to build. I just had a great time doing it. I know, it's different. The channel's been trucks, but hey, I'm going to build some other stuff. I'll do an RC car next, and then I've got an RC airplane, and then I've got a couple truck things, and a radio review coming up. So there'll be all kinds of weird stuff on here because, well, that's the kind of guy I am. So anyway, you want to see how I did this? Let's get started. So on this 10th scale Viper, I thought I'd just show real quick my Creality K2 Plus printer. And this is the main body section being printed. This is probably the largest thing I've printed to date. It's over a spool of PLA, and you can see the tree supports here. It's about 95% done right now, and I'll show a picture of it when it's finished. But printing up very nicely. It's a huge piece. So here's this massive Viper MKII rear fuselage assembly in 10th scale. This thing is huge. It's the largest part I've ever printed. It took about a spool and a half of material, and you can see it's got all the tree supports on it. I can certainly start to remove those, but wow, this thing is cool. It's big and amazing detail. Once you print one at this size, you realize that these little pipes back here aren't just the surface detail, but they're actually raised up off the surface, and they're a little pipe. So there's a few little tiny supports underneath these. Super nice detail. Really, really pleased with how it's coming out. So I just wanted to show this as I get ready to remove all these supports. There's a lot of material in those, but wow, it's pretty awesome. This is going to be one cool model. I'm going to go ahead, and there's a lot of support work inside here. As you can see, it's these are the supports for the clips that hold the parts together. But yeah, I'm going to be doing a lot of support removal. It's kind of boring to watch, so I'm not going to show it all on video, but we'll get all these supports off of here and see how this piece looks like. On the Viper, they have the RCS thrusters all over the place, and because of the large size I printed it in, they're a little on the big side. So what I'm doing is I'm bushing them down. Plus it'll make them a lot sharper. I'm bushing them down with some plastic tubing. So I'm just cutting little bits of tubing here and gluing them in. And once they dry, I will fill around the edges of them and then sand them down so that they sit flush with the surface, and that'll give me a nice sharp edge to the thrusters and make them a little bit smaller, which is what I want. So I'll just fill these probably with a little super glue, and then when I start to cover this with primer and sand it all in, they'll blend right in. This piece itself looks really good. The seam line was on the bottom. I just smoothed it out really quickly with a raspy file that I have, and yeah, it takes care of the thrusters. I think those will look a lot better. So I've smoothed out my RCS thrusters, and they turned out really good. I used just a sanding tool to sand everything smooth. Now, it's important to note that I'm not trying to sand out the print lines. I depend on primer for that. I just wanted to get these smooth. They're nice and sharp. They look great. I also did the thrusters in the back. Same thing, they turned out really nice. So what I use for primer is I use a brush on. I use this Rust-Oleum primer. I'll brush it on, wet sand it, brush it on, wet sand it, do a couple coats of that, and then use spray primer after that. But that really fills in the layer lines nicely. So I'm going to probably glue a couple pieces together. Probably I'll glue these two together and then put some primer on them. And I don't know, I might glue all of it together before I put primer on, or I might put some primer on and do individual pieces. I don't know. I'll show you as I do it. But boy, this thing is big. It'll look cool. So after 2 coats of the paint on primer, I sprayed on some Rust-Oleum black primer. And the reason for that is when I sand it, I'll now be able to see how smooth it is. So I'm going to go ahead and sand this, and then we'll see what it looks like. I sanded this, I wet sanded this with 320 grit. You can still see it's a little wet. And it's just super smooth. You can see there's not a lot of layer lines. You can see an example right here. But it's filled. I usually will drag the tip of, an X-Acto knife or a pair of tweezers across, and that way I can feel what's going on. And this baby is really smooth. So I'm happy with how this turned out. I've got the next section here. It's also the same, very smooth. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these together. I've got the next section, which is the cockpit. It's also very smooth. So I'm going to glue these 3 together. And they use, the files have this little, well, it's not little at this scale, but this little clip that mounts in here for alignment. So they align perfectly, and the clip snaps in. Now, I've found that this clip is really, at this scale, is really, these bumps are too big. It's just super hard to push together. So I'm going to file those down or sand those down a little bit, and then I'll clip this together and glue it, and glue this one, and then I'll have one piece to work with. And my next step will be to spray some Tamiya fine primer on it, gray, and then sand it again, and then of course the black will show through the gray. So the alternating colors of primer will allow you to kind of see what's going on. Now the main body, and I just was sanding this, you can see it's a lot of work. There's a lot of surface area here, but it's not perfectly smooth yet. I can feel a few imperfections. You can see the low spots here because they're black. And so I'm going to put another coat of the brush on primer and then sand that off, and then do the Tamiya primer. So I'm going to continue to work on this piece. It needs a little bit more cleanup. Right now I'm going to let it go out in the sun and dry for a while, and then I'll come back and do the primer. But yeah, overall it's smoothing out really nicely, and then I'll do the same thing to the wings. So let's glue some pieces together. A few more coats of primer on this baby with some wet sanding with 320, and it's nice and smooth. Everything looks good, no layer lines. So now I want to glue these 2 pieces together. This thing's getting really big. There's clips that go here, here, and here, and then there's a clip space here. I'm assuming in an earlier version there's a clip there that they had a different interior. Now the interior just drops in. You don't need clips. But what I want to do is light it. So I'm going to use, when these fit together, this clip hole is just barely above the floor here. So what I'm going to do is drill a hole, and I'll just do it right now. I'm just going to drill a 1/4 inch hole right here. That way I'll be able to feed wires up through here and then up through here, and I'll either cut a notch in the floor or a notch in the base so I can run the wires up and then run them up behind the dash. So now I'm going to go ahead and glue these two together and then let that dry. Just a little quick update. I've got these glued together. Right now it's sitting on the landing gear, but it's just sitting on it. It's not glued on. I'm going to now glue on the fin and the wings. That's why I've got it sitting on a landing gear, to keep it up off the table. So you can see I've done the same primer, sand, primer. Got these parts nice and smooth. So we'll get these two glued on, and then we'll go to work on some of the other parts. But it really is coming together pretty well. Once those are on and drying, I'm going to work on these engines. So anyway, I'll get those glued in. Okay, well, sorry for the background noise. The printer's working in the background, but I need some parts, so it's going. You can see that I've got this thing primered and sanded and really kind of finished off the way I want. So before I paint, I want to glue in these landing gear bays. So this one's going to glue in here. And then we've got one that goes here and one that goes over here. And they've got some detail inside of them. So I will paint that separately after I paint the base color. And then the landing gears will slide in. Now I'm not gonna put the landing gears in before I paint. I'm gonna paint it and then add the landing gears. And I've got to reprint them because I printed them kind of in a standard setting and they're not quite strong enough. You can see this one here I broke. There's the other side. So I'm going to print them with extra walls. This thing's going to weigh a ton, so I want the landing gear to be really solid. So anyway, right now I'm going to glue in these gear wells, and then I will be ready to paint the base fuselage. And while I'm painting, I will work on the engines and the lighting for the engines. So I'll glue those in and we'll move on to the engines probably, and maybe a little bit on the canopy. So I continue to work away on I've been working on the canopy, and you can see these white strips here. What I did was I took some 060 by 060 evergreen plastic and built a little window frame on the inside. Now the upper part already had a frame. There's a frame around 3 sides of this, but there wasn't on the front, so I just continue to frame it out. So when I make clear windows, I have something to glue them to. I printed out the windows just so I have something for templates. So I'll clean these up and then use them for templates to cut the clear plastic out of. So I'm going to put some more primer on this and then I'll paint it. And I've got to watch a few more. I got to freeze frame some Battlestar Galactica. The painting guide from the Mobius plastic kit shows the window frames as silver, and I'm not sure if they were silver or gray. Probably silver. I'll probably use Tamiya mica silver, but I want to just verify that before I actually final paint it, and then the canopy will be done. The engines, I've been working on these exhaust nozzles. I think I finally got them the way I like them, and I'm going to back them with a piece of milk carton to diffuse the light, and I'll go ahead and paint these, and then I'll put my LEDs in, and I'll coat this with aluminum foil first, and then paint these, put the plastic on and drop them in, and then have an engine. So I'm going to go ahead and primer the engines and paint them, and then I'll work on the pieces inside. So, taking a look at the engines, I've got this one here that I painted in gunmetal. This one's gunmetal, this one's still in primer. And I'm working on the nozzles, so I printed this nozzle that fits here. And then what I've done is I've taken, I always save pieces of milk carton whenever I have empty milk cartons. So I'll take a piece of milk carton here and trace my nozzle onto the milk carton. And this stuff is just fantastic for, take a pair of Lexan scissors here and cut it out. And this stuff makes just a terrific diffusers for lights, so it really changes the appearance of how the LED looks in the engine. So that will fit behind here. Let me show you what that looks like. Alright, so back here on my back workbench, you can see I've got a blue LED here, and when we put it in, it really is too bright, so I'll drop my exhaust diffuser in without the milk carton, and you can see what happens there. And then with the diffuser, piece of milk carton in, and gives me the effect I'm looking for. Now I'm going to program these lights so that they that's what I'm looking for, so they pulse and flicker, and I'll show you how to do that when I program them. So we'll now paint this with gunmetal to match the engines. I'll glue this on the back side. I will then paint black around the edges to prevent light leak around the edge, and then we'll glue those in. And I'll line this with aluminum foil when I do that. Okay, so I've got some paint on this baby. I painted it with Tamiya AS20 Insignia White, which is a U.S. Navy white. It actually has a little bit of an off-white to it. I would say slightly gray. I'm using the painting instructions from the Mobius kit here to do the stripes and the details. So the guns I painted with light gunmetal, and they're going to mount up here. Canopy's also light gunmetal, and the engines are light gunmetal. The engine intakes that go here, this is the opposite side, I painted these with gunmetal, light gunmetal. I painted these hoses with flat aluminum and the details with some titanium gold. And I'll do a little more detailing when I get those installed. I have not done anything with the interior yet, and I will. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to mask off all this area and then paint this detail here, and then I'll mask off around here and paint the detail here. So once I get that masked, I'll come back, show you some pictures, and I'll airbrush it. Then I will mask off the red stripes and the red nose and get those painted. So that's kind of how I'm going to break it down. So first thing, mask these off, get these painted. So there's the sides masked off, so I can paint the gunmetal parts, and I will airbrush those, and then I will come back and peel that off, and then we'll go work on some red. I just wanted to quickly show off the paint. So that is gunmetal, and airbrushed it in there, took the tape off. So now it's time to tape off the red stripes. I think before I do that though, I'm gonna, the inside of the nose here is kind of a dark gray, so I'm gonna do that. And then just looking at, been watching Battlestar Galactica over and over again, this area back in here is a darker color, so I'm going to spray that with some gray, and the inside of the nose with some gray, and then I will tape off the stripes, the red stripes. So I've got some work to do. Just thought I'd do a quick shot of the masking before I paint the red. It was quite a bit of work. So now I will go mix up some red paint and we'll see what it looks like. Well, and just like that, we have a Viper. I mixed together Tamiya red and Tamiya hull red, which is kind of a rust color, until I got a color that I liked, and airbrushed it on. Turned out just fine. I've got a few little areas to touch up. For example, right here there's a little bit of overspray. I'll polish that off, and a couple of chips where I banged it. I'll just touch those up with a brush. So once I get that all cleaned up, I'm going to let it dry really good. I'll spray a couple coats of clear gloss on it and start to work on decals. I've got the decal sheet here from eBay, and we'll go to work with some of that. So and then start to glue on some of the accessory pieces, the engine intakes, the engine grills, just kind of finishing up the outside. So clean up the overspray, a couple coats of clear gloss, and we'll start doing decals. It's looking really good. I'm quite pleased with it. It's huge. I don't know where I'm going to display it when I'm done. We'll see if I can get a little real estate from my wife. I don't know. But anyway, looking good so far. Alright, so I've got some clear gloss on it. Now I'm going to put on the decals. I'm going to start with these emblems here that mount in the red stripe, and I've got the decal placement guide from the Mobius kit, so I will be using that. I'm going to use Lee Adama's Viper, and it'll be I'm going to heavily weather it, so it'll be as used, but obviously right now it looks brand new. It won't look that way forever. I also glued on the landing gear. I painted those in aluminum and used some Tamiya panel line marker to weather them a little bit. And I'll weather the landing gear bays. I'll show that when I do it. So let's start with some decals here. Well, as you can see, I've got decals on it now. So I'm going to glue on these pieces that I've already painted, and I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll probably go to work on these engine bells, figure out how I'm going to handle that. Coming together nicely, but yep, these I'll just glue on with some E6000 glue, same with these, and I may have to extend the wires. I'm probably going to look about doing a little programming to get these to flicker with an Arduino. So I'll work on that, and I'll probably glue the cannons on while I'm at it. Pretty straightforward mount. So glue this, engine intakes, cannons, and then we'll go work on the engines. Alright, sorry for the background noise, but I whipped up a little Arduino sketch here to randomly flicker the light, and I think you can probably see that. I've set the values between 60% and 100% brightness, and they flicker, and it'll flicker all three independently. So I'm going to go ahead and install them on the Viper and then wire them up to this board. We'll see how it looks. I've got the engine bells mounted now. I haven't hooked them up yet, but they glued on just fine. And what I did, boy, this thing is big, is I extended the wires just for ease of wiring, and I'll hook all the grounds together, and then I will take the three positives, and I program this to 9, 10, and 11. The board easily fits up in here. I'm going to use a little 9-volt battery plug to power it, and I'll probably put some Velcro or something inside of here and a switch. And then I've got the hatch already painted. I'll probably use some magnets or something like that to hold it on. But that way I can just flip it on. It'll run for hours and hours and hours. And I can do additional lighting effects off of this if I want. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with the cockpit yet, but right now I'm going to solder the grounds together and put pins on them so they'll just plug easily into the board, and then we'll see what the lighting looks like. This thing is massive. It's hard for me to work on my workbench because of the size, but it really looks cool. Once I get that done, then I'll start working on the weathering. I still have to do the windows for the canopy, and then I've got the cockpit here will be the last thing that I do. And the nice thing about this cockpit is it just slides in, so I can change it later. I can do anything I want. I'm trying to decide if I just want to paint it and throw it in there, or if I want to start adding some lighting. I'm going to have to redesign some things to light it, but we'll worry about that in a little bit. So let's get this wired up. Alright, so you can see here I've got all three engines hooked up. There's the wiring. I turned my lights down on my bench a little bit. Single 9-volt battery runs it. I'll time it later and see how long it runs, but the flickering effect is separate on all three engines, so they randomly jump around. I may change it to a little bit lower rating. I have it 60% to 100% right now. Might change it to 40. It would make the flicker a little more pronounced, but for now I'm going to leave it right there. And of course with these Adrenos it's very easy to change the effects, so that's good. I'll go ahead and tie this wiring up and kind of get everything organized inside here, and then I'll move on to the probably the weathering. That's the next big thing to do. So looking good so far. Well, as I set up the interior, I've got this little Dratus display, and this came from Brick Stuff. I'll put a link in the description. And it runs on 5 volts. The Uno board has a 5-volt output over here, so that's great. I can run 5 volts to that. So I thought I would get this Dratus display mounted in the dash. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that. This is really thick up in here. I might actually reprint this piece and slice it here, and then I can cut out the console and replace it with a sheet of clear plastic or something and mount this behind it. I'm not absolutely positive. I'll keep you up to date on it, but I want to play with this and get it working. I took my power supply from my Uno board and just added a on-off switch into it so that I can just shut it on and off without unplugging it. And I put some Velcro in. The board's Velcroed up inside now. This is another board. So that's my next goal, is to figure this out. I'll go ahead and get the seat painted and yeah, figure out exactly what to do with this. I was thinking I could just cut it apart right now, but it would be, I don't know. I'm going to play with it and I'll show you what I come up with. I'm starting to work on the cockpit. So this is printed out the figure. I wasn't planning on using the figure, but I want to at least have it. So this is the cockpit with the seat. And let me zoom in on this. I'll show you what I'm doing. So the stock cockpit, stock seat, stock pilot figure. The problem is this has got, as I mentioned, so much material in here, it's going to make it difficult for me to mount my screen. So I thought, why not use the cut feature on my slicer to cut it. So I did that. I cut this one. As you can see, my slicer allows me to print alignment pins, so that can work. But you can see how much material is in here that I just can't get into the screen. So I thought, well, I'll use a razor saw and cut it, and I thought, man, there's a lot in there. That's too hard to do. So I sliced it again and recut it into even smaller pieces. I also increased the size of the alignment pin because to make it more sturdy. And so what I've got here now are individual sides. So now I can put the sides in, and then I can build the dash out of thin plastic. And I sliced off this upper part right here, so that'll go across like that. So I can make a dashboard however I want to replace this dashboard with a dash that has the cutout for the screen. So I'll probably 3D print it. Actually, I'll probably just design up a little part for that, and then I can mount my screen in it, and I'll put some other backlights in it, and then I have real easy access to make what I want. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to glue these together. I couldn't slice it. I had to slice these. I would have liked to have left these on here and slice it this way, but you can't do that because it cuts all the way through. So anyway, maybe you can. I couldn't figure it out. I'm not super genius with 3D printers. So anyway, I'm going to glue these on, and then I'm going to start mocking up my instrument panel and see how that works. But I think it's going to work out really good, and I'll be able to get my little Dravis console in there and some other illumination that maybe will make the cockpit look really cool. And what the heck, the pilot figure is really pretty nice. So I'll probably go ahead and paint that up and decal it just to have it. I don't need to put it in permanently. I can, a couple little pins in there. I can just use it when I want, because you can just drop in there and yeah, that looks pretty cool. Boy, definitely the Viper with this in it looks so much better. So anyway, I'm going to go to work on that. We'll see what happens. Well, I just came over here to my other workbench for a second just to show you what this looks like. So there's the display turned on with 5 volts. I made a piece to go across here, split this off the top. So now I need to make a dash and put a cutout that fits that. Main thing, I wanted to turn that on so I could get the cutout size. So I'll design up a dash and print that out, and then we'll see how this fits together. So here's the parts I made. First off, here's the dash panel, and you can see that this is going to fit in there really nicely. And I added instruments on each side, and I've got on my decal sheet a whole bunch of nice instruments. And then the lower part of the dash is right here, and it's got another instrument hole and then a couple of display holes. I've got some different display pictures on the decals that I'll use. So they will mount. This mounts in here. Get that glued in. This will mount like this, and just kind of like that. I'll get that glued in, and I'm going to probably stand it up and down a little bit more than the stock dash panel. Let's see if I can make that stay. Maybe not. And then this one will glue in kind of at a flatter angle. So what I'll do is I'll glue those in. I'll spray black paint on the back side. I'll glue pieces of a good old milk jug over the holes to diffuse the LEDs I put in behind it. I'll put the decals on the front side, and then this little box was the top one right here, and that, when I sliced the original cockpit, that's the panel. There's what the dash is going to look like different. But while I was looking at the Viper dash, I noticed it really only had 3 instruments in the upper panel, and it was a little shorter, so I made a new one that's shorter, and you can see it's got the same thing. I put holes for instruments in it, and I left it hollow in the back side, so I'll glue a piece of aluminum foil on the back, piece of milk carton on the front, put a red LED in it, and that'll sit up here on top like that, replacing this one. So that's my new cockpit. I'm going to go ahead and glue that together, and then once that's glued together and the LEDs are in, then I'll print some backing pieces that are solid that'll mount underneath so the light doesn't bleed out into the bottom of the cockpit. So I'll drill a hole through here, get an LED in it. I'm going to paint some of these things and glue them together, and we'll see how it looks. But I'm very happy with how that dash is going to turn out. I think it's going to look great with the operational DRADIS screen in it, and that'll look really cool looking through the canopy. So on we go. So I put a little primer on this, got it stuck together, and you can see the difference between the stock unit and the new unit. Looks like that. They actually, the Gambody files have 2 different seats, the standard seat, and then this seat here has a little bit of a depression and a notch, so the pilot fits in it better. Now originally I was going to not have a pilot figure in here, but the pilot figure, I don't know, I've kind of gotten used to it. I like the looks of it, so I'm going to use this seat, and now I've got to spray a little paint on here. I also 3D printed this little bracket. It's got 2 separate areas, and it's going to mount underneath here like this. And it does 2 things. One, it gives me a place to mount LEDs underneath, and then it prevents light from leaking down and illuminating the inside of the cockpit, so only the instruments will be lit up. So I will mount the lights in this. You can see I've got a couple holes for lights to go in it. I'm going to have blue lights in these 3 gauges, red here, and then of course my little display will mount back in here like that. That's going to look sweet. So I will do that. I'm going to go ahead and paint the seat, paint this interior, and then we'll work on lighting. As you can see, I've got the interior painted. I painted it with a real light gray, and then I used a Tamiya panel line marker to put a black wash on it. I used the instruments from the decals, just a few extra colors in there, and then sprayed it with clear flat. So now I've got to mount this little display in here. It's going to mount in from the back side, and what I'm going to do, you can see it down in here, is I'm going to use hot glue to hold it in. And the reason for hot glue is it's not completely the most permanent thing in the whole world. So if I ever needed to take it out for some reason, I can kind of cut away and pull it out. So I'll glue that in, and then I'll glue in my little light base on top of it. And I'll probably also use hot glue to glue that in for the same reason, so I can take it apart if I need to. I'll run the wires down along the floor here, which means I can run them back into the battery bay of the Viper easily. And I'm not going to glue this in, so I can slide it in and out in the future. I painted the seat with some semi-flat black, and I've got a coat of primer on the pilot. So I'll go ahead and start thinking about painting him or her. And yeah, coming along nicely. We'll get this cockpit put together, and then what I was thinking about running the LEDs here on more voltage than 5 volts, but they look really good on 5 volts. So I will tie all the wiring together, so I'll only have 2 wires running to the aft part to provide power, and I'll provide 5 volts to the whole cockpit. And there it is, lit up. My gauge is lit up, my dash working. I think it looks very, very nice. So now I'll go about tying up the wiring and getting the pilot figure painted. On the Canopy, I made windows from this 30 thousandths clear polyester sheet. I used the printed windows for templates to cut them, and then trimmed them to size, glued them in with Pacer Canopy glue. Then I masked them off, and I just used some more Canopy glue to fill the corners. I'm going to let that all dry, sand it up a couple times, clean it all up good, and then I'll repaint the whole Canopy frame. And that's really about the last thing on the Canopy. So we'll get that looking pretty nice and get her on the ship. There's the Canopy with the windows in. They turned out just fine. I painted it with gunmetal and then clear flat, and the weathering is German gray. Now you can see that, maybe you can see, there you can see, I have finished the weathering on the ship. It is most of the weathering was done with either the base color, which is AS20, or German gray, which I don't like to use black. Canopy fits on there nicely, slides good, so I can display it open or closed. And you'll see back here on my Arduino Uno, I've got the two wires that go up to the cockpit. There's a plug right there, and those are for the cockpit lighting, and then these three wires are for the engines. I've got a 9-volt battery on it right now. The engines fire up, they flicker. I'll zoom in on that in a little bit. And then the cockpit, let's see if I can get it where you can see it here. Yeah, the cockpit looks great. Turn off my light here, a little bit darker. You can see the instruments light up nicely, red, blue. The Dratus is working good. Super easy, and it looks spectacular. And I can display it with the Canopy slid open, with or without a pilot figure. He's not glued in there. So yeah, that's basically it. Now I've got just a couple things left. I've mounted a piece of Velcro on here and a piece of Velcro up inside. I've got to come up with a method to hold on the battery hatch and be able to remove it. Probably use a magnet, so I'm going to go ahead and get that organized, and then I'll come back and we'll do some final pictures of it. So my final little bit, I just printed a L-shaped bracket here for the switch. You can see it down in there, turns it on and off. And what I did on the hatch was I just made a slider. And at first I was thinking about doing something small, but then I thought, well, why not make it look like some kind of mounting rail? Nobody ever sees the bottom of these anyway. So you can see I've got a plate here, and it just slides, and then the plate just latches underneath. And it also hides this little notch in the back, which I didn't really like. So this just goes here, slides in place, slides forward, and then it latches it in tightly, holds everything together. So that was my final little bit. Let me move some stuff out of my way here and we'll get a good look at this thing. Alright, so there is my finished Viper Mark II. I am super happy with how it came out. I just think it looks great. I've always wanted a big Viper, and I thought about scratch building one, but then now this 3D printing thing makes it just super easy and super cool. This thing looks good from every single angle. The engines look good. I'll turn down some lights here and take a look at the lighting. But Yeah, I just think it looks great. It was really fun to build. I just had a great time doing it. The 3D printing thing, like I said, to me it's almost like science fiction. The canopy slides, and the pilot figure is removable, so I can display it different ways if I want. And of course I can pull the canopy off, get a better look at my DRADIS and my instruments in there that are lit up. They look good. The engines, I just think look really good. And they flicker just like I wanted them to. So there we go. Viper Mark II with files by Gambody. I just am super happy with the whole project, and I got to do more cool 3D printed stuff. I don't know what'll be next, but hey, we'll just keep working on it. This is just me building models. That's all I can say. After the little exit thing on my video, I will take some standard pictures and put them in the video. So if you keep watching past the end little credits, then there'll be a bunch of pictures of this thing close up, so you can kind of see what it looks like with photographs. But there you go. Battlestar Galactica Viper Mark II, 1/10 scale. Cool. I love it. Hey, I appreciate you watching. Probably pick up some new people on this video just because of the nature of the thing. I normally do truck builds, RC truck builds, but every once in a while you got to do something crazy like this. If you go back in my videos, so almost the very first video I did was building this little Mobius Viper in 1/32 scale, and so now I have a big one, and I always like this thing. So there you go. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.